Welcome to the Primal Show with today's guest, Kevin. Is it Geary? Am I pronouncing that right? From
Yep.
Rebooted Body.
Yeah, that's correct.
Make sure you all check him out at rebootedbody.com. And glad to have you on the show today. Wanted to discuss your program and some of your customer testimonials and kind of everything you got going on. I've been seeing you around the internet lately, and love to hear a little more about your program.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no problem.
So you want me to start with my background and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I read a little bit about your, I guess you have a black belt and a blue belt, a black belt in Taekwondo, and very interested in, kind of, I guess, the Rebooted Body program itself and kind of how you're helping people with diet and, exercise and kind of your philosophy behind the Rebooted Body program.
Yeah. So basically our philosophy is very different from most. We take a very long-term approach to the game of health and fitness. As you probably know, the health and fitness industry is very kind of short-term oriented, a lot of superficial, like Band-Aid style approaches.
Right.
And people do find success for a short period of time, but unfortunately it's not the long-term success that they're looking for. So our basic message is that we want to help people get a body and a life that they love. So we kind of look at this as two sides of the same coin. So if we have a success coin, we have body on one side, and we know that if our let me do the flip side first. If our body is out of order, then we know our life is going to be out of order. Most people recognize that right off the bat, but they miss the other side of things, which is if your life is out of order, there's no way you're going to be able to invest the time and the energy that's required to have a body you love as well and a body that works great. So we have to address both at the same time. So we help people see, number one, the psychology side of things, like why have I failed to align my behavior with my good intentions? Because everybody has these great intentions to set out and do this stuff for themselves, and for some reason they don't execute. Right. So one of the big things that we help them, that's one of the big questions that we help them answer. And we talk a lot about how the lifestyle side of things really interacts with the body side of things to make sure that people are hitting both areas.
Makes a lot of sense because I have friends all the time that ask me, hey, can you create a diet for me? What are you doing because you're getting results? And then I'm like, are you really ready to make a commitment to this style of eating? And, obviously I follow a paleo kind of protocol, no gluten, no grains, and no legumes, no dairy. And it's a commitment to eat in this style, but I have found a way to make it easy, obviously by our own food products and just by knowing the types of foods I can eat. I make it easy for people. What have you found? Have you found that to be true? And obviously your own clients, walk. I think it's all about the commitment level, and obviously about just people's diets just being so far off that their body has just completely deteriorated from either a hormone point of view or they're just grossly overweight. They're just feeling lethargic. So I think it all starts with, are they really ready to make that commitment?
Right. Yeah. And, a lot of people are ready to make the commitment, or they think they're ready to make the commitment. Obviously, there's a lot of people who don't understand how much work is actually involved, so they expect it to be an easy process. And
Sure.
I try to get the expectations set up, authentically in the beginning so that they know it is a lot of work to transition, especially if you're coming from, 10 to 20 years of standard American diet eating and a sedentary lifestyle. Making all these changes, there's a steep learning curve at the very beginning. It does take a lot of work and time and attention. But if you get past that hump, then like you said, things just start to really get easier. You're on a roll, and there's not as many challenges, not as many obstacles. So day to day, it's much easier to stay committed and stay on track. The key is getting people through that transition period. And teaching them how to manage and handle that transition so that they don't, quote unquote, fall off the wagon, right? That's the big piece.
Yeah, I think cravings is definitely a big thing, and I always tell my friends, hey, look, it's going to be 2 to 3 weeks where you're going to crave carbs, you're going to crave sugar. And at a certain point, though, those will disappear. but it's those 2 to 3 weeks that are brutal, and it's usually when people quit, but after those 2 to 3 weeks, you start to really see results, but those cravings can be horrible.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's actually two ways I look at that. So there's a short-term, like physiological cravings that, like you said, 2 to 3 weeks before they go away, before you get past them and they dissipate. Then for certain, group of people, not everybody obviously, but for a certain group of people, they will kind of be plagued with like these intermittent cravings that will come back, 3 months later, 6 months later, a year later. And what this is usually tied to is just an unhealthy relationship with food, where food represents something else in their life besides, just food itself. So it represents comfort or security, things like that. So it's a coping mechanism. And for these people, they can have all of the right information about what to eat and how to exercise and how to tweak their lifestyle habits. And these are the people that still can't execute because the food, and especially processed, hyper palatable foods, is, like I said, a coping mechanism in their life. So anytime there's stress, anytime their lifestyle is out of order, what are they doing? They're turning to these foods to cope, and that continues to derail them over and over and over again. So that's why I say that the psychology side of this is so important, that people have to understand what's happening in that cycle and then how to break out of it. Otherwise, they're going to have a lot of short-term success. They're not going to have the long-term success that they're really after.
Well, and I find it funny because so many people work out so they can eat in a certain fashion. But at a certain point, your body says, forget this. It's going to gain weight anyways. It's not going to work long term, or you're going to start dealing with things like inflammation. And you see these people at the gym and they never make any sort of gains. It's like they're continually stuck in the same place, either with their weight or they're just continually unhappy. And it's like, at this point in the game, I think it's 70-80% diet and 20-30% working out. And when I say working out, after adjusting my diet, working out has become so much easier, and I work out so much less. I work out 3 to 5 times a week for maybe an hour, I do my cardio, I do some weight training, but because my diet's on point and my hormones have become balanced and I no longer carry the extra weight, I have more testosterone. My testosterone level went up, and it's like I feel better. I have more energy through the day because I'm not wrecking my blood sugar anymore with taking in carbs and sugar. It's interesting because all my friends complain about, I just don't have the energy through the day. I'm sure that's a common complaint you hear. What are some things that you've been able to teach some of your clients about how to have more sustained energy through the day, and also kind of as we get older, some hormone balancing and how to increase hormones naturally?
Yeah, well, obviously the first thing is like if you don't have your food dialed in and you're eating a bunch of inflammatory foods, that's going to zap your energy right there. And I try to tell people the biggest lesson here is even converting to real food. There's real foods that may not necessarily agree with your body. And so it's a process of sorting this out, which that kind of, it sounds complicated to a lot of people because they thought, oh, all I had to do was eat real food. Well, not necessarily. Sometimes you switch to real food, and there's some groups of real food that don't agree with your body, and we have to kind of parse that situation as well, because anytime you're eating foods that the body is seeing as inflammatory, it's having a response to, that immediately is going to zap your energy. Then the next biggest thing I would say is like matching carbohydrate intake to activity levels. So if you have somebody that's sitting at a desk all day long and they're just generally sedentary, their need for carbohydrates in their diet is much lower than somebody who is very active. And then the third thing I would say is getting people actually moving. So I don't want people to say, well, I'm kind of sedentary, so I need to be low carb. Really what I say is, no, you just need to stop being sedentary. Like, let's find ways where we can really start moving, because that is, you said workout was only 20 to 30%, and I agree. I think movement in general is a much more important piece, though. Like, you just cannot lead a sedentary lifestyle and expect to have a body and life you love.
Yeah, and I only say that because my diet is on point. Obviously, I work out hard when I work out. It's intense. My workouts are between, I would say, 700 to 1,000 calories I'm going to burn during my workout. So it's not like I'm just, walking or something like that. But, I think I definitely agree with you. Just moving in general is great. If you can at least start walking, that's a great place to start. And then you change your diet. I mean, you're going to see some benefits. I like to set a goal though. I mean, for me, like I lost almost 40 pounds and my goal was to have a six pack because my dad, he didn't, he was skinny everywhere except for his stomach. And genetically, I'm like, you know what do I need to do to offset what I'm predisposed to by my parents? And it's like, all right, well, I need, you start thinking about having a stomach and what that entails. It's really an inflamed, uh, I guess, it's an inflamed look because you're consuming foods that are inflammatory. So what are those foods? Corn, potatoes. You start looking at the inflammatory factor from these sort of even real foods, they inflame the gut. Beans are very hard to process. Once again, more inflammatory. Can they be eaten in moderation? Sure, but should we consume them all the time? Probably not. And I always found I'm starting to recommend a lot. People go to this site called nutritiondata.self.com, and they actually type in any real food ingredient, go in there and see the inflammatory load of it and the glycogen response to the body and everything. It kind of shows everything about that real food. And it's a great way to start identifying the foods that might be right for you.
Yeah, that sounds like a great resource. I've never personally been there, but I'll definitely check it out.
Yeah, I think it's a great way because people are like, oh, well, it's a potato, it's real food, but what they're really getting is it's starch and a lot of carbs, and same with corn and a lot of these ingredients that just need to be eaten in moderation or maybe just avoided at all costs. So, but tell us a little bit about one thing I'm always curious, and I ask everybody about is as we get into our 30s, I think everybody starts to pay way more attention to their diet. We also see that hormones change also as we get into our 30s. Now, I think with any thought process on how to have optimal health, I start thinking about, well, part of health is hormones, and how do we start building a proper healthy hormone, hormones within our body, meaning our testosterone levels start to decrease in both men and women across the board. How do we keep a healthy testosterone level naturally? Because now, especially in America, we're seeing just all these ads about replacing testosterone. Are there any things like herbs? I've started to do a lot of research on, Indian herbs to increase testosterone, or just herbs in general, things that you can recommend to your clientele that boost hormones naturally, which in turn give people more motivation to get out there and work out.
Yeah, personally, I haven't done a whole lot in the supplement field. Like my whole mission right now, and because of the clientele that I work with. So I work directly with people coming from standard American diets who they don't know really anything about real food. They count calories, they do all of the portion control, Weight Watchers style,
Sure.
Dieting, things like that. And my whole mission is to transition them away from that. And what that does, obviously, when you stop destroying and breaking down your body, all of those, the hormones are going to re-regulate themselves automatically to a point. But
Right.
as far as like supplementation and herbs and things like that for, altering hormones, I haven't done a lot in that area just because it's not necessary for the people that I'm working with.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I mean, we can actually control a lot of it just through food, increasing
Right.
and, eating whole eggs, for instance, obviously is a great way to boost testosterone. Taking in broccoli is a great anti-estrogen. So there's so many things we can do just with real food. And you're right, as the fat drops off our body, we see a natural increase in testosterone anyways, just because you're not creating too much estrogen within your own body. But yeah, it's something that I definitely want to learn more about because there's these Chinese herbs that have been around for thousands of years, and I'm just now starting to do my own research on it, and it's amazing. I mean, these warriors were taking things like yohimbe bark and all these like chavan presh mixtures, and way back in the day, and they were just seeing incredible just health and vitality from consuming these herbs. It's something that I'm just definitely fascinated about, so I always like to ask everybody that comes on. But
yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, tell us a little more about your program. What do you? Can you tell us some of the success that some of your clientele has had following the Rebooted Body program in terms of like weight loss and so forth?
Yeah, so I would say the majority of people come for fat loss, right? But there's also we have people that come for weight gain. So there are people who feel they are underweight, and what they want to do is they want to increase their weight with a real food approach. Like they don't want to just eat whatever. They know they need more calories. They know they need a different style of exercise, but they want to do it the right way. So we have that. So I try to let people know that this isn't a weight loss program. Like this is a health program first. It's about getting your body healthy again, taking away the inflammatory foods, nourishing your body with as many micronutrients as possible and a diverse range of micronutrients, and then getting very productive types of exercise in. So we have people who come for fat loss, like I said, but a lot of people are also coming to heal themselves from nagging ailments, digestive issues, skin issues, all that stuff. So there's a wide range of why people come. And I think that if you look at our testimonials, what you're going to find is that even if people come for fat loss, right? When they write that testimonial 5 months later, 6 months later, a year later, they are listing, weight is in there somewhere, but they're listing a dozen other things that changed in their life. And it's not all physical too. It's psychological because like I said, we work on the lifestyle side of things. So we try to tell people, look, if your relationships are disordered, guess what? Your health is going to be disordered. If your finances are disordered, guess what? Your health is going to be disordered because all of those things are stressors in your life, major stressors. And you're not going to have a body and life you love until those stressors are taken care of. So you'll see in our testimonials, like Therese is one of our key testimonials that we talk about all the time. She had 3 houses. She had a job where she had to travel 2 to 3 times a week. She hated, like it was kind of sucking the soul out of her and draining her with just all sorts of stress.
Right.
She said that in one of her houses, like she had enough, like just stuff, right, to open like a Goodwill store, basically. And she was just drowning in this lifestyle. And she ended up, after doing our program and the aspects of talking about lifestyle in our program, of which margin is a big one. So we have this concept called margin. Margin is the extra in these different areas of your life. And we have 8 key areas where we work on margin, like relationships and finances and your environment, things like that. So this part of the program inspired her to sell 2 out of her 3 houses, move to Florida, and restructure her job so that she's now spending, based on her job, like they're paying for her 1 day a week to basically stay on a beach in Florida. And she's not traveling anymore. Like it totally restructured her life and, dropped weight, got her biomarkers, improved as far as like cholesterol goes. And, she's basically has not just a body she loves, but a life she loves. And that's really hard to say for other programs. Like what other program have people gone into where they were inspired so much to change all of this major stuff in their life, and now her happiness level is exponentially increased, which is really important to me.
Yeah, I found it also personally, but I find all the time that people, when they start following a certain way of eating, especially, like a paleo one, I don't know how close your program is to paleo, but at least for myself, when I began doing paleo, I noticed a tremendous clarity came about because I was not eating those inflammatory foods, which were triggering the histamines within my own body. So I wasn't able to see everything that was going on in my life, and I was constantly dealing with like almost like a brain fog, people call it, and that really cleared up. Can you tell us a little bit about your program and like maybe some of the things that you would avoid, and how is it at all paleo, or how would you compare the two?
Yeah, so I try to avoid labels because it puts people's thinking in boxes, right? What we do is we take a real food approach, which starts out with excluding things like grains and legumes and dairy. We're also trying to teach people how these foods react to their body. So one of the key aspects of our program is there's no rules in the program. Like when you join, we're not going to say, all right, here's a list of rules that you have to follow. We're going to make suggestions, and we're going to hope that we're going to try our best to get you to buy in to those suggestions based on how you feel and how you respond to testing these suggestions out, right? So yeah, it would look very much like paleo in the beginning. Then we want to start adding foods back in, and we want to show people, all right, there's certain grains that are just fine. Like, we don't have to demonize all grains, and especially if these are prepared properly, right? Same with legumes. So we start teaching people how to do that. And add those back in. We don't like demonize carbohydrates. We don't demonize like tubers. Like, people are going to be eating potatoes if they want. But again, we have to match that with their activity levels. So like I said, if you're more sedentary, you're not going to be sitting around eating potatoes all day long, right? So it's all about context.
Sure. You found, even with, I have to cover some of the stuff you just mentioned, because
Yeah.
for myself personally, and also like the company I run is Julian Bakery, we used to do sprouted grains. We used to prep the beans and stuff like that. And what I found, and there was so much research, that all grains contain gluten. Gluten by itself is damaging across the board to your intestinal, and it will always be inflammatory, even when prepared properly. I mean, have you seen research otherwise? Because I'm like a major anti-grain fan, so much so that our business has been around since 1990. We actually replaced every single grain across all of our products and completely started a grain-free, gluten-free company because of that research. Have you seen something otherwise? Because I don't know of an instance where grains are actually good, But have you? I mean,
Well, I think
what has been your experience? Because as far as I know, all grains contain gluten. I've never found one that hasn't. But can you talk a little bit about that?
I think when people say grains, they do automatically think gluten, and I think it's because of how Paleo and Primal have kind of defined grains. But if we think about it, rice is a grain. So when I say all grains, automatically rice is a grain that does not contain gluten. So that would fall into that category. And then I'm thinking things like fermented sourdough bread, right? Where we are basically not seeing the gluten in there anymore after the preparation, or at least at very, very low levels. So and again, you look at this and you take certain people who obviously have a reaction. They're not celiac, right? They obviously have a reaction, though, whether it's brain fog or skin breakouts or whatever. And we show these people, look, that's not working for you, whether it's an obvious gluten-containing grain or not. Like that food is not working for you.
Yeah.
Where we take another person and we don't see those things, then we say, look, it's up to you. I wouldn't just like eat these all day long every day, but it's not going to kill you if you have it every now and then. And moderation, we have to use this term loosely. I've defined this many, many, many times on the site because people kind of misunderstand the word moderation. But I think that is a healthy view. Like, we never want to say that food is bad. Let's demonize that food. Let's never eat that food ever again. Because I don't think that's a realistic or a healthy approach. We just have to know, how do I respond personally to this food, and do I want that response? And if I don't want that response, then let's not eat it.
Well, and that's why I wanted you to clarify, because you brought up a great point. All grains, rice is also in the grain family. Can rice be used at the proper time in terms of building, even making it anabolic? I think so. The research now suggests actually consuming white rice during I call it an anabolic window right after you train, because you're going to actually see more benefit and be able to uptake that with protein to actually create harder and leaner muscle. I think, the timing of when you consume that is huge. Do I still think staying away from all grains regarding that contain gluten is the way to optimal health? Absolutely. I don't think it's, that's just my personal opinion, because all gluten is bad. It doesn't matter, even in small amounts, whether you have an allergy to it or not. It is so bad for you that it should be completely demonized. At least that's how I think. But are there other carbohydrates, which, like rice and things like that? Sure, absolutely. Should soy be avoided and demonized? Absolutely, especially in men, because you're talking about soy actually develops gynecomastia in men. Should it be avoided at all costs? Absolutely. Should you avoid soy? And they're sneaking it into everything. It's probably one of the most GMO things out there. So I don't know. Demonizing certain ingredients, I would say, at least personally, I would demonize definitely soy and anything containing gluten. but can people get away with eating it? Absolutely. But I like to give people better options to cheat with,
Yeah, absolutely. What I would say is we definitely have people avoid soy, and we definitely have people avoid gluten as a general rule, right?
Right.
What I want to avoid is, let's say somebody eats something with gluten in it. I think it's far more destructive for them to run that scenario through their head over and over and over again. Think about how they just screwed everything up. Think about, wow, that food is going to destroy my intestines and yada, 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 right? Now the mental side of this is far more destructive than whatever they just ate. So that's, I think, the issue with demonization is that it causes more mental stress than the food actually does physical stress on the body. So teaching people what these foods do, I think is important. Like, we have to educate,
Sure.
but at the same time, we have to make sure that they're not beating themselves up, over very small details. Now, if they're eating gluten every day, obviously, big problem, right?
Right.
But if they have it at a birthday party, and they haven't had gluten for the last 6 months, should it matter, right? Should they really care?
Well, they'll
Especially if they're going to go back
notice
tomorrow.
it. They'll probably
They may.
because they're going to be so cleaned out. So, but yeah,
Right.
that's all. I mean, I don't like to take such a hardline approach because obviously that's the popular thing to do. It's like, you try to make it more appealing to everybody by saying, hey, don't demonize certain ingredients, but at the same time, it really does, especially gluten, I feel has such a powerful impact even in small amounts.
Mm-hmm.
I had this lady reach out on Twitter yesterday. We're advertising our protein bars, and they're the gluten-free, grain-free, and all this is spelled out in the ad. She's like, what's wrong with gluten? I consume Vital Wheat gluten all the time. I'm like, here's a bunch of research. She's like, well, I don't care. I'm just going to eat gluten anyways, even after providing her all the information. And that just comes back to, is a person really willing to, even be educated? Because so many people are so closed-minded.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's like they don't even realize the potential, how great they can feel. People are in such this quagmire and this clouded mental state all the time because of the foods they're consuming. They have no idea how they could feel. And I'm with you. By eliminating all these things, you can feel so much better and have so much more clarity. And I think also at that point, too, you start figuring things out in your own life. Those stresses start to go away by avoiding certain foods. And to your point, I also think that once you do take away those foods, that if you try to introduce them, you would probably never consume them anyways, because you're going to start not feeling good again. And you're going to be way more susceptible to, hey, you're going to be way more sensitive, and you're going to be paying attention to how you feel.
And that's why the process is so important of transitioning people and up front saying, look, these are our basic suggestions. Give these a shot. Because when they do implement those suggestions and then 3 months down the line, they decide they're going to eat birthday cake or they're going to have whatever because they're out to eat, they experience the negative side effects because now they've had a chance for their bodies to heal and the inflammations calm down. And now they reintroduce this stuff and they notice right away, wow, that really made me feel like crap. And that is a huge learning experience for people, right? And I don't want them to feel bad about that. I want them to look at that and say, I never knew what these foods did to me before now. Like, people said these foods aren't good for you, right? They said they'll make you feel like crap, but I didn't believe them because I had them every day of my life, and that was my normal, right? So now I actually know. That's a turning point for a lot of people.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. What are your thoughts on like intermediate fasting or ketogenic style dieting? I mean, are any parts of the Rebooted Body, do they, touch on those subjects at all? Because, I mean, those are both two pretty popular things right now.
Yeah, I've written an article on ketosis for the benefits, and then I've written an article on ketosis for the context of ketogenic eating. And my recommendation was that the majority of people should not follow a ketogenic eating protocol, but I do recognize that it has some benefits, especially medical benefits. So there are a certain group where this does fit them, but I don't think ketogenic eating should be used as a quote unquote diet protocol, right? If you have somebody that wants to lose weight, get healthier, be fit, things like that, I don't think ketogenic eating is the way to go. And that was my general recommendation. What was your other question? It was
Intermediate fasting.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So with intermittent fasting, I do have people at a certain point in their journey experiment with this to see what they think about it and how they react personally. I don't have them do this if they're under a lot of stress. I don't have them do this if they still have nagging ailments that they're trying to get rid of, because this is just an added stressor. And I always talk about the stress stack, because it's not one stressor that gets you, right? It's the stack of stressors. It's putting one on top of the other, on top of the other, on top of the other. And intermittent fasting is a stressor on the body. So if they're experiencing a lot of stress in other regards, maybe their sleep is not dialed in, right? Their quality of sleep is down, or their quantity of sleep is down. We're not going to put intermittent fasting on top of that as another stressor. So I say, if you have everything dialed in and everything's great, go ahead and experiment with intermittent fasting and see if you enjoy that.
I couldn't agree with your second point more. But going back to ketogenic, I would have to disagree. I mean, personally, I follow a paleo, low carb, keto diet. So I'm continually in fat burning mode. I no longer get any sort of energy from carbohydrates outside of when I load. And if I do load, it's like 3 times a week directly after a very intense workout, or sometimes I do it before. But I'm continually in a fat burning mode. I have like a million times more energy throughout the day than I ever did trying to play kind of like this carbohydrate guessing game, or consuming just carbohydrates normally. Now, when I say carbohydrates, these are refined carbohydrates. I do consume vegetables regularly, but I would say my mixture is more, and I don't take an overabundance of fat. I would say it's 50% protein for 50% fat. So it's very balanced, my approach, and almost like no carbs. And my sugar level is like almost non-existent. But what I'm curious to find out why you don't think that is the best way, because I mean, so many people are getting so much benefit from this style. I when I think of diet, I think of there being 2 forms. One, you watch calories and you consume less calories than your body burns, or 2, you have this, ketogenic style where your body's burning at the fat level all day to burn away the fat, and you're going to end up becoming more shredded because you're constantly burning at that fat layer. I mean, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think, if we look at the mechanism of ketogenic eating and why is it really beneficial for fat loss, or why does it help people lose fat very quickly, you are eating at a caloric deficit, right? That's what it's getting the caloric deficit without the hunger that's involved with normal dieting. Like if I did typical calorie restriction and just kept eating everything that I was normally eating in a standard American diet, but lowered the amount of calories, I would be voraciously hungry, because I'm usually, number one, avoiding fat, right? And I'm not getting the proper levels of protein. I'm eating a bunch of carbohydrates. So I'm just cutting calories in that context, and I'm very, very hungry. Well, with ketogenic eating or any low-carb eating, you're eating very satiating foods, lots of protein, lots of fat. You're not hungry, but you're still at a caloric deficit. So it makes it easy for people to be at a caloric deficit and lose weight. The problem I have with ketogenic eating, there's a few problems. Number one is it's a little bit more restrictive than I think is necessary for most people. It does require, if you actually want to be in ketosis and want to verify that you're in ketosis, it requires testing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that is way too obsessive for most people that I'm working with, because you have to think, I'm working with a lot of people who have a disordered relationship with food, so we don't need to bring in more obsession over what's going on and obsession over the process. So we tend to avoid that with them. And then I've also found that, it is an added stressor on the body being at a caloric deficit for a significant period of time. I've seen a lot of people go through adrenal issues with this, especially when other aspects of their lifestyle are more stressful than most, which is a lot of the people I work with. And when your hunger is masked by eating a lot of protein and a lot of fat, and you're at this caloric deficit for a very long time, we can see a downregulation of the metabolism just because you're running this steep caloric deficit. And a lot of people don't even realize it. They just keep eating less and less and less and less, and it creates a cycle.
No, okay, what you described right there, I would say yes, it is unhealthy. But what the style of ketosis that I do, because you're talking about 9 times the calories of fat. So
Hmm.
when you don't have to consume much fat to get an incredible amount of calories. So that would
Right.
be the for starters. The second thing is 4 times the protein. I'm consuming like I would say at least probably 300 plus grams of protein, 400 a day. So basically 2 grams for my body weight. So I'm about 195 right now, or something like that. So I'm consuming a considerable amount of calories right there, and the carbs I do get would be from like straight vegetables, certain vegetables, no potatoes, no corn, nothing like that. But I would say I'm not really going into a deficit. If I do want to get really lean and cut, what I do is I actually moderate the fat. I'll actually go low carb, moderate to low fat, and I'll
Hmm.
drop way below my caloric intake. And what I've found is I just get completely shredded, and it's quick. I can, like, let's say I go on vacation and I'm still eating high fat, low carb, and I've consumed actually above my caloric burn. I notice I'll get a little bit bigger, and I like to be lean. So what I do when I come home, I'll go 3 days of low carb, low fat, or even go down to no fat, and just completely shred out.
Right.
So that's
Right.
for myself personally. And I think it is a healthy relationship, but it needs to be done right. I think that there's a lot of misinformation out there, and the ketogenic style of eating, I like it, but there's also the opposite end of the coin where these guys are just pouring tremendous amounts of oil. Their balance of their diet is so high caloric. It's way above what their body's burning that they're actually gaining weight.
Hmm.
And then they're out there preaching this ketogenic style. So there's that side of the coin too. I think that there has to be a healthy balance. And I think at the end of the day, no matter what style of eating you do, it's all about balance, and it's all about trying to achieve optimal health. And I think that there's a certain set of foods and a template, a style of eating that can get you there the fastest. Now, I like what you're doing because you're basically removing a lot of stuff and then you're adding stuff back in, and you're finding out what's right for that person. So do you do a lot of online coaching or one-on-one coaching, or kind of walk us through what your program entails? Like, how do you interact with your current clientele?
Yeah, so our foundational program is Total Body Reboot. That's what we try to start everybody into when they're in that transition period. If people come to us and they've been committed to real food for a long time, they're just having other issues, then we typically take them to just private coaching, right? But we have a program called Total Body Reboot for people transitioning from a standard American diet or the dieting model, getting them to change their relationship with food, trust their bodies, nourish their bodies, get functionally fit, end all of the obsessive and inflammatory exercise that they're thinking they need to be doing, that type of thing, right? And working on the psychology side of things. So that's Total Body Reboot. It's a 5-stage, 4-month program. And we walk them through from A to B, and then we provide coaching one-on-one through our support system inside of that program. So there's also a community aspect to it, and there's group coaching calls. So it kind of hits on every point of supporting people as they work through that program. So it's not just giving people an outline and saying, hey, good luck, right?
Yeah.
We're starting them from day one, and we're with them, like holding their hand from day one, answering every question they have, answering every concern they have. If they have obstacles and challenges, we're helping them overcome those. I mean, we work with so many people now that we've pretty much seen everything, and we know exactly how, when somebody runs into an obstacle, oh, we've seen that before. Here's how we can help you get past that. So from
So
point A to point B.
that's so
Yeah,
important right there, because I think a lot of people are like, here's a program. There's not a lot of interaction with them. They're just like,
right.
here's a program, here you go, and then the level of support's not there. I think when you are on a diet, at least I know I was when I was doing it by myself, I had so many questions. So I think to be able to have somebody be able to answer those questions is awesome.
Yeah, and it's also important because we aimed specifically to not build a one-size-fits-all program. So like I said, there's no rules. We're not trying to put everybody inside the same little box. We're teaching people how these changes respond to them personally. So a lot of what we do is people start applying the framework of Total Body Reboot to their life, and then they get back with us and say, okay, here's what's happening. Like, here's the benefits. Here's what's I'm not experiencing any difference whatsoever, et cetera. And then we're making adjustments adjustments for them based on the feedback that we're getting from them from applying the framework of total body reboot. So it's a constant like back and forth of tweaking and showing this person, all right, this is like your kind of eating and lifestyle code that you're discovering through this program, rather than here's an outline and this must fit you, go. And like if it doesn't fit you, then too bad.
Yeah, I mean, that's I think one of the reasons why we've developed so many products that are like gluten and grain free. I call them transitional foods. I love to be able to get you some of our products because they really help with that transition from like a mainstream style of eating to just a clean way of eating, no matter what you want to call it. There's so many people that need help. They need like a crutch before they can, completely get away from everything mainstream. So I love to be able to get you some of our bread and wraps and cereal. We got bars. We got all sorts of great stuff, and see if it's, possibly a fit. I think it would be pretty awesome.
Yeah, I'd love to check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll send you a nice little box, so I'll hit you up afterwards.
Cool. That works.
Make sure everybody check out Kevin Geary at rebootedbody.com. Check out all his products. You have a great little YouTube page and website. So
Thank you.
Yeah, it's awesome. Thanks so much for coming on today. Make sure you hit the subscribe button to keep up with all the Primal Show videos, and we'll see you all soon. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you.